Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'll be reviewing Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. So this just came out today on Netflix, and I have to say, I was kind of a fan of the first film. I liked it a lot more, I think, than most critics or even the general audience. But this one, for me, just came up a little bit flat of that one. My big criticisms of the first film, that it was incredibly exposition heavy, and it took a long time to really get going, and we didn't get a lot of character development, particularly with some of the side characters. I do think that this film corrects the character development part. I like that we get to dive more into characters like Titus that had a really interesting and cool backstory, but really didn't do a lot in the first film. But I have to say, the development of our main leads never feels like it ever got that emotional impact. And without going into too many spoilers, by the end of this film, there's supposed to be a very impactful moment. And I felt, for me at least, it didn't feel like it fully got there. And this story didn't get me more invested in this universe than I already was. So with the idea of it being, more and more films, it just feels like it's getting more tired to me. And the idea that there are better versions of these movies out there, these director's cuts of these films, I just want to see them. Like, it's frustrating for me as an audience member to be like, I think these movies are fine, but oh, maybe there's a good version, like a really good version of this movie, but it's being withheld from me for some weird marketing reason. I just would love to see the best version of this, and I probably will just kind of hold off from now on to just wait for that to happen. And there are some things that are carried over from the first film that are positives and some negatives. The cinematography, the visual effects, the action that I enjoyed from the first film that I think that a lot of people did carries on in this one. There's some really good action, particularly in the second half of this film. It takes a little bit getting going in the beginning half, but by the time you're thrown into these big battles, you kind of get what you want from Zack Snyder. Big action, slow-mo, explosions, cool fights. There's actually a full-on almost like lightsaber fight. Obviously, these films are very derivative of other sci-fi franchises, and that's also the case in this one. But a negative that kind of carries over from the first film is it is so exposition heavy. I do enjoy this universe that's being built, but it felt like the first 30 minutes of this film is rehashing and just adding more on to what we've already established in the first film. The first film does a pretty good job of setting up this universe and the stakes and the players involved. I didn't need another 30 minutes of us just explaining more backstory of the same characters. So that felt a little bit frustrating to me. I just really want to see this story get going. And the fact that this could be potentially, from what I hear, 6 films, where I just think we're just going to keep getting a ton of exposition until we get to the end of this series. Another kind of negative carryover from the first film is the villain. Obviously, we know from the ending of the first movie that Atticus is coming back. He comes back, but in a way that doesn't feel like there's a huge payoff. Without going into too many spoilers, it doesn't feel like there's a real reason why we need to bring this character back. It's not like there's any real change in who he is as a character. It doesn't feel like there's any development. He's kind of just like the Terminator in this one. And this movie does have a level of almost cheesiness and silliness that was there in the first film, but it feels so ridiculous at times that it can be enjoyable, but then also frustrating with the things the characters do, the way things play out. So I would have loved to see maybe it just tightened up a little bit more. It feels like there's something there beneath the surface, and maybe that's what these director's cuts are. Maybe there's something that can help flesh this out and make it better, but it feels so hollow at times. We have such a lush lore that he's trying to build, but then the actual characters and the events in the movie don't feel like they really capitalize on that. And also, the end of this film, like I said, without going into too many spoilers, is just setting up the next film. And that's how I felt about the first movie, is that, okay, we're setting up what's going to really happen here. And then this movie feels like, okay, now we're setting what's going to happen next. And I know in a lot of franchises you have to do that to move the story forward, but you still want it to feel like a complete story, like you've accomplished something and not watched like an episode of a television show. And that's kind of how I felt when I was watching this one. It almost feels like this could just be a series of it's just long episodes of a television show. It's not like an individual movie, and this movie feels very much like that to me. But at the end of the day, there were some things that I enjoyed about it, whether it be the improved character development, the visuals, and the things that I liked about the first film, but then there's some negatives thrown in there that kind of overweigh them at times and make me like it just a little bit less than the first one. The optimism that I had going into this franchise from the first movie is starting to dwindle a little bit. I would love to see an improvement maybe on the third installment. I don't know how often these movies are going to keep being made if they keep getting so negatively received by people. So I would just really hope that it gets better. At this point, I said I don't have a ton of faith in this happening, but I would love to see it because I think there is a cool world here. I think there's some really interesting elements to expand on. It just isn't capitalizing on it. So if you check this one out, let me know what you thought about it. I would love to hear your opinions and how you feel about this franchise moving forward. How does this compare to the first film for you? Are you excited for the next one? How has this kind of changed your perspective on this franchise? I always love to hear your opinions. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.